Good afternoon and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. Thank you for joining us. It's Thursday, July 1st, and this briefing is brought to you by Marana Group. Marana Group is a data, documents, and distribution solutions company. Marana Group offers a full line of solutions designed to get your company's message in the right hands in a timely and cost-effective manner. You can find out more at maranagroup.com. Brian, I'm Rob Fowler. That's Brian Calley. We're the co-host of this. Brian, I just, was thinking about, we've been watching the total vaccination numbers. We're at 61.7% of eligible people being vaccinated in our state. And, I guess maybe this just as a level set, why do we care about that? What's in it for us?
Well, we know that over the last 16 months that restrictions and rules, workplace safety rules, restrictions on being open have been tied to infection rates, hospitalizations, and the threats that came along with COVID-19 under the epidemic emergency powers. Those epidemic emergency powers are still available. The governor could still invoke them again in the future, and we know that especially for those businesses who cannot easily transition into a remote work status, that it's terribly disruptive, that it has put many small businesses out of business in the last 16 months. And we know this is one of the most effective things that we can do to protect against that happening again in the fall. Now, Rob, I say in the fall, but when I look around the world right now, things are, there are a lot of countries that are still really struggling with COVID-19. There aren't very many doing as well as the United States is doing at the moment. And so I know that we're not at a point where that risk has gone away, but we could be. And one of those factors that could put it permanently in our rearview mirror is a higher vaccination rate.
We're going to talk a little bit about these, maybe what we consider to be the newest threat, the Delta variant, in a minute. Before we do that, we have a guest, and so much of what has happened so far, actually, the Congress had their say, had their finger on the pulse, sometimes not, but the Congress really was an important player in the recovery efforts. You and I had a chance to catch up with Congressman Fred Upton yesterday, and here is that conversation.
Back on the Small Business Briefing is Congressman Fred Upton. And now he insists that we call him Fred because he's the same guy that got elected all those years ago. So Congressman Fred Upton, thank you so much for joining us and for all the work that you've done for small businesses. I really couldn't say or could never ask more of a member of Congress or ask more of a public servant than you throughout this pandemic. The way that you've been accessible, the way that you've responded to needs and concerns and carried those through, really a model public servant. And here we are again when we've got many small businesses around the state that have received their forgiveness for their Paycheck Protection Program, but some have not. There are certain types of loans that seem to be held up. Some of the rules on the second round of forgiveness seem to be delayed and moving generally slowly. And before this time, I didn't even have to call and ask. It turns out you were already on top of it, which is not unusual. So, Fred, tell us about what your office is doing in the Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness issues that some businesses are having today.
Well, a couple things, Brian. It's great to be with you again, and it's actually nice to be sitting down in a stationary place versus on the Indiana Toll Road or Ohio Toll Road when we did one of these podcasts when I was driving back because the airlines weren't flying and we had votes on some of these important issues. So I put the phone on my dash and I just drove with my seatbelt on, and there were not any other cars on the road, so it was fine. And it was interesting when I passed an Ohio State trooper with my beat OSU license plate, but I lived to tell the tale. But you're right. The whole PPP program was a huge success, and we need to continue to make it a success. I worked as a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, a bipartisan group of nearly 60 members, to write legislation to make sure that the Treasury Department and the regulators didn't go after the lenders who made these loans, because the argument being, well, how could you give a loan to a small business if they're closed? Sort of against everything that you believe in, and obviously a certain situations with the pandemic. So we got relief there. And when we ran out of PPP funds, we got a couple more infusions to get it there. And it was my provision, in fact, that said that if the loan was under $150,000, you didn't have to worry about an audit. It was automatically going to be forgiven. And we streamlined the form because it was, I think, dozens of pages, and we made it a pretty standard form that was a lot easier. But now we're in the position of, a year and a half into this, a lot of these loans, they've been held up in terms of forgiveness. And so I wrote a letter the 24th of June to SBA. As we talk today, we have not heard back from SBA, but I've talked to the chair and the top Republican, Democrat and Republican, about getting SBA to move on, to get these things forgiven. And this letter that I wrote, and you can, if people want to get on our website, upton.house.gov, you'll find it there, a letter that I wrote to the administrator of the Small Business Administration. And maybe by the time this is aired, and we'll have a response, and we'll put that response right next to it. But we need some action. We need to help. As the country is opening up again, thank God, we need to make sure that particularly small businesses are taken care of. And that's why these loans need to be forgiven, and we can move forward rather than the heartache and everything else, as small business owners are just so concerned about what is the status of that loan that they got many months ago, and obviously losing sleep. How are you going to hire people? And we got a lot of other issues I know we're going to talk about, particularly in the restaurant industry and others, but let's get this behind us and move forward.
Well, we really appreciate that, Fred. We actually got a copy of that letter and shared it on our website as well with our members to make sure that they understood that you were working this issue, that you were making the calls, following up and writing, and you'll get the results. Now, you had mentioned with restaurants, so the Restaurant Restoration Fund that originally had about, I think, $28 billion in it, that was used up really quickly and used up with certain categories. Women and minority-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses had priority with that. And I want to say that when the applications came in, that those categories took up about 26 or 28 or $27 billion of it. So many businesses that have applied, really the money ran out. And I think that there's some action that you are supporting, which is being taken to rectify that.
Well, you're right. I mean, this was an overwhelming program. I mean, 3 weeks after opening it up, the SBA received more than 360,000 applications for some $75 billion in funding. So the money's gone. I mean, it's gone. So we have a bipartisan proposal, again, led by many of the Problem Solvers Caucus members, Republican and Democrat. That's what this is. But it replenishes that fund with another $60 billion. And I know for us here in Michigan, the Michigan Restaurant Association is a strong supporter of the distilled spirits folks. I would have voted against prohibition. I just want to put that on the record. My predecessor, a couple of times removed, did not. He voted to override President Woodrow Wilson's veto, but I think we've learned otherwise. But obviously, that this has a huge impact. And the restaurants, and we knew this more than a year ago. As I talked to the president of the National Restaurant Association, obviously a lot of the Michigan restaurateurs here, Ken Miller, who's been on the board, and other very prominent Michiganders, we knew that it was going to be a long time before they could recover. They were told to close. They were told that they had to be, gradual openings, 50%. They had to rely on takeout orders, and of course, can't drink and drive, so the alcohol sales are a big issue, and so they were really hurting. And of course, now it's really hard to find the workers, and we're going to get into that in a moment too. But as my wife and I gone to a number of restaurants in Southwest Michigan where I represent. They're closing whole days. They're closing at lunchtime or dinner time because they don't want to burn out their staff. I had one restaurant owner tell me that he offered a $5,000 bonus to the woman who ran the bar to get her back. She moved out of state on top of the wages to get. And, you know, they're not recovering. I mean, it is, we need these additional funds. They're sort of one of the last industries to really come back. And of course, as we know, restaurants, and that's where I got started. I don't know about you. They're mom and pop shops. The woman and the man. I mean, it's often a family team are running those things. They have to be there all the days that they're open, and it is a really tough job. And when you lose that clientele and you've got to close extra days during the week because you don't have staff, you're not recovering from this thing with all the other things that are going on. So let's hope that we can get this thing done. We have some good, prominent Republicans and Democrats on board with this. I got a feeling the administration will support it, and we're going to try to move forward.
Good. That will be a big step, and I think just for those out in the audience, the way that this bill works is that that if you have already applied, this essentially provides funding who has already applied. So it won't be opened up for new applications, but they took applications for that period of time, and I think the funding will work through all of the applications that came in while the application process was open. What a huge difference this will make for an industry that was most restricted and closed for the longest compared to most other industries. So we appreciate your work and your effort on that. And sure, go ahead.
For the folks that are listening, if you contact your member of Congress and say, co-sponsor HR, it's 3807. If you would weigh in with them during the next couple of weeks so that they can be a co-sponsor of this bill, that'll help us generate the support to show the leadership on both sides of the aisle that this really is a grassroots issue, and we need to move forward on it. So John Molinar or, Haley Stevens or anybody else, whoever your member of Congress is, get on the phone and say, please co-sponsor HR 3807.
All right, excellent. So we will definitely follow up with and ask our members to do that. And then why don't we wrap up our conversation, Fred, with the talk about unemployment. So you'd mentioned, the businesses trying to get to staff up to take full advantage of this demand for the goods and services that they offer. And many are having a hard time staffing up. And that's a complicated issue. There are a lot of factors to it. One of those factors is the unemployment system and returning it back to pre-pandemic levels. The federal benefit goes through September 4th at this point, and so states like Michigan have looked at it like it's a requirement to do it through the 4th as opposed to an option. 26 other states have exercised the option not to go through the September 4th. Maybe if you could speak to, I know that there's a bill in Michigan, it's made through the House, made it through the Senate. The governor is likely to veto it to return the system early to the pre-pandemic levels. But at the federal level, maybe you could tell us about what you expect to happen before and after September 4th.
Well, I think it's going to expire. I mean, that's the good news. I mean, I'll confess, I voted against the last COVID package. I thought it was too much. There's still trillions of dollars in the pipeline. And this $300 bonus, remember, was $600. So they pared that down to $300 bonus on top of the state's unemployment and extended it then, as you said, to September 4th. President Biden, a couple of weeks ago, said that he would be okay with allowing it to expire. So I expect it to expire. And the congressional schedule is such that when we adjourn for the August recess, we'll be out from, I think, most of August. So that'll be the time, obviously, leading up until September 4th, a Saturday, and we don't come back until the following week at this point. So the argument to be made, oh, we can't let this expire, and Congress has got to pass a must-pass bill. And, Biden didn't say veto it. He said that he would allow it to expire, but if given the choice, he might do something otherwise. But the good news then is Congress won't be in session. We aren't likely to pass this thing. As you said, 26 states already have said enough. It's every business is looking for folks. You don't need this bonus to stay home, as some people have used it. And, as I see in Southwest Michigan here, I mean, I've got like American Axle, they're looking for 100 people every single day. I mean, I heard from a woman that works there, and she said, shouldn't it be against the law? I've been required to work overtime 60 out of the last 61 days. I'm burned out. You go to any of my, business corridors, whether it be a Paw Paw or St. Joe or Kalamazoo Portage, it's anywhere. Signs, help wanted. It's on the marquee. A lot of these jobs are $20, $25 an hour to start. So forget about the minimum wage stuff. And in fact, we heard last week that there are some businesses that are actually providing a $30 an hour bonus if people just come back to work. So it's, it's impacting the supply chain. You look at anything from appliances to autos. There's a huge shortage right now of workers, not only here in Michigan, but around the country. And frankly, some businesses are talking about moving out of state because they can't find the workers. So this bonus needs to end. I'm convinced that it will. I think a number of Democrats would join with most of the Republicans, if not all, to say enough is enough. Let's get the economy moving again. And this bonus is not needed at this point. I understand why it got put in, and it was actually a Trump initiative way back in March of 2020 to offset some of the states that had very low rates. Florida was $235 a week, but Governor DeSantis was the first governor to say, I'm done with this. And it's Governor Abbott, it's our state down in Indiana, I think Ohio may be one of those as well. So, and I know the State House and Senate, as we talk today, they both passed legislation waiting for the governor to act, and maybe she'll sign it. We'll see.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Fred, and I'll just say that there are so many people in public office who say they are pro small business, but you with the bills that you sponsor, your voting record, and also your constituent services, you always pick up the phone. It's amazing how often you personally pick up the phone to deal with constituent issues. It is it's really something. So I can say with all confidence that we could not ask for a stronger pro small business member of Congress than Fred Upton. Thanks for joining us again today.
I've got your back. Don't worry. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for your kind words. Keep up the good work.
All right. Well, thank you, Congressman. Brian, one of the things that you talked about with the Congressman is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And I think one of the things we've learned is the SBA has actually pulled back or rescinded some of the money that they made available. And the reason for that is a lawsuit coming out of both Tennessee and Texas, restaurant owners who objected to the set aside for specifically women-owned, veteran-owned, and economically disadvantaged, socially disadvantaged companies. And I think some felt like that was discriminatory because all the money originally set aside went to those populations. It really did leave nothing for anybody who's in one of those categories. It's interesting now that the effort that Congressman Upton just talked about was more money, and that would solve this entire issue, would it not?
It would. So you notice he said $75 billion. If you do the math, that's a little more than what would be needed to handle all of the applications that have come in, or $75 billion to come in, and they want to put another $60 billion in. They started out with 28, so that gives them more than enough to cover all of the applications that came in, and it would essentially make the lawsuit moot as a practical matter. There might be still some legal reasons why that could still continue through the process even after the funding issue is rectified, but
as a practical matter, if the bill that Congressman Upton was talking about ends up making it through the process, then all of the applications that were submitted, assuming you're eligible, would be paid out.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that one. That's really going to matter to some Michigan restaurants who were approved for a restaurant revitalization fund application and then put on hold by the SBA because of this background lawsuit. So we'll stay on top of this one. We said at the very beginning, the Delta variant, actually we're finding that there's more and more counties in Michigan are finding the Delta variant of the COVID-19 virus. What does this portend for us?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this on Monday when we did the numbers updates, and I know that this hand. Can everybody else see this hand right there? It's freaking me out. It's not my hand, but it's like by my head.
I don't see it, Brian. I think
oh, you don't
have a ghost.
There's like a little little gremlin in my computer, I guess, right now. Anyway, I wanted to lay out why we really need to pay attention to the Delta variant, and on Monday when we talked about the numbers, but it's gotten even more. It's even gotten more real because for the first time it inspired a practice recommendation change in the U.S. So in Los Angeles County, so a lot of states, their public health regs come from at the county level. In Los Angeles County, which has about the same population of Michigan, 10 million people, they have gone back to recommending masks for indoors for everybody, vaccinated and non-vaccinated. Now, why would this be? And part of it is because they do see a rise in this variant. It's believed to be about 50% more contagious than even the variant that came out of the UK, which was more contagious than the one that came out of Wuhan, China in the beginning. So it's not unusual for variants to be more contagious. Now, whether or not it's more deadly, it causes more issues. In real time, we're starting to understand that. But as it starts to spread throughout the U.S., it's here in Michigan now as well. It could threaten additional restrictions on business in the future. So when we see something like a mask recommendation, not a requirement yet, but in Los Angeles County, the first time here in the U.S., I think we need to pay special attention to this and do whatever we can possibly do to take advantage or to limit the chances that could possibly come our way. Now, in Michigan, there were just last week there were 6 counties that the Delta variant had been identified in. This week it is 15. So it is fast becoming the most prevalent, but the numbers are still really, really low here. So the good news is that we're in a part of the cycle where it's not likely to spread like it otherwise would have been. The other thing too is we're starting to get a good sense for what the efficacy of the vaccines are against this particular variant. Still quite high, but not as high as the previous variant. So it's looking like it's somewhere around the 80%, 78 to 80 to 82% effective in preventing infections. And it's more effective than that in preventing serious illness and death. But nevertheless, when you consider that our population, about half of our population is unvaccinated, some have natural immunities, but the efficacy is, instead of 96 or 94%, 82%. You put all these factors together, and you can see why you look around the world, see places like Australia or the United Kingdom, where they have additional ways where they really, really believed that it was behind them until it wasn't. So if you see us talking about vaccines in the future, really it is just because it's the one thing that we can do in order to make sure that our members, small businesses in Michigan, are not faced with the types of hardships that they were in the name of virus containment moving forward in the future.
And, you know, I think we are aware that some people feel very strongly about not getting a vaccination, but there are still those out there who either just haven't decided or they haven't gotten around to it. I believe it's in small businesses' interest for as many of them as possible to get around to it because it matters for the reasons you just mentioned. There's a new incentive. It's interesting, we watched last year, Ohio, I think was the first to have a lottery or a sweepstakes for those who've been vaccinated. Michigan now has one too, called My Shot to Win Sweepstakes, just announced yesterday by the governor.
Yes, you notice it's called a sweepstakes, not a lottery, and that's because they can't do a lottery legally. But there are other ways. They brought in some other partners, the United Way and Meijer being kind of the main partners to pull this off. It's a public-private partnership, and it's pretty big. So we saw Ohio do it first. Now, Ohio did it through their lottery system. Michigan couldn't do it that way, but they have been working on this for a while to find a different way to do it. So $5 million in total prizes. They're gonna, now anybody who's already had a shot, you can register for it. So there's a website. I think we're gonna add the website in the comments here. You have to register for it. So you're not automatically entered in. But anybody that has received a shot, going all the way back to when they were first available in Michigan in the winter through till now, they'll do a first drawing on July 10th or shortly thereafter. So you can register, get your shot, or register through the 10th and get the first, the drawing for the first $1 million. They're going to do a $2 million drawing about a month later, and again, that'll be everybody who had been entered in, whether you got your shot a long time ago or you got your shot just recently. If you've had your first shot, then you're eligible. But again, you have to register for it. You have to go to the website and say, put me in the hat, put my name in the hat. And then they're also going to do daily drawings of $50,000 throughout the month of July. So if you go through and if you were to get your shot today, then tomorrow they will do a $50,000 drawing. Anybody who got their first shot today would be eligible to be considered in that, and they'll do that over the course of the month of July. And then finally, for those parents who registered their kids in a drawing, for anybody who is a minor that got at least their first shot, would be eligible for a scholarship through the Michigan Education Trust for a 4-year college education. So they put the price tag on that of $55,000, what they believe that is worth. Naturally, we know that might be what it costs, but in most cases, that's worth a whole lot more over the lifetime of the person who received the opportunity for such great education. So they're really going after this hard, Rob, to create an incentive. Again, it's not to convince somebody who doesn't, if you don't want to get one, you don't just, you don't have to get one. There's no rules that are gonna, there's no mandate that's gonna come after you to get it. We certainly don't support mandates. This is meant to be an incentive for people that, maybe hadn't got around to it, really just not that big a deal to them, just to kind of, to edge more people toward this idea of of getting a vaccine so that we can reach herd immunity, which as they do the calculations, they figured probably about 2.5 times the number of people who have had COVID diagnosed. The amount out there, the real caseload over the course of the last 16 months, probably about 2.5 times that. So figure those people have natural immunity. And then you have some people who have, a lot of people now that have had vaccines. If you add those two things together, then that's where you start to get to herd immunity. But we're still probably around 10% off getting to that point where we're at herd immunity. So you take natural immunity plus vaccine immunity, you add them together, and we're still about 10% off. So you say, well, what's your standard? What's your 10% off of what? Really, the standard is Israel. Israel in real time looks like they have reached a point of herd immunity. So that's kind of the benchmark standard that all the rest of us are chasing.
Well, I'm going to go on record right now saying if I win $1 million, I'm going to give it to SBAM. Most of it. I got to take taxes out of it. But I'm on record right now.
Yeah, very good. I'm married to a legislator, so I don't think I'm eligible. I wasn't going to do that. But if I was, I would do the same thing.
And anybody else wants to make the same pledge can do so at sbam.org. So one last thing on Monday's briefing, we talked a little bit about no shutter venue grants had been given, and since then we found that at least one has in Traverse City.
Yeah, kind of interesting. So right after that, not that we're taking credit, but right after that there was an award. I'll tell you about this award. So I read it in the Traverse City Record Eagle, and it's to the Traverse City Film Festival. And now, on the one hand, we saw that this thing had been out for a long time, no awards had been made, and then all of a sudden there was one, and it was for $933,000 to the Traverse City Film Festival. And so the article in the paper really kind of got into a bit of a drama. Now the film festival, one of the owners of it is Michael Moore. So, and then on top of that, President Biden will be traveling to Traverse City just shortly. So my guess is that they wanted to kind of get something out in front of that. The controversy in the newspaper was that when the money was awarded, they posted to fill their positions, but they didn't call the people laid off back to their jobs. And so what I think was intended to be a big victory, like, hey, we're going to get this first one out there, and it ended up being kind of embroiled a bit in controversy. But nevertheless, we are hopeful for our members who have shuttered venues or venues that were shuttered most of the last year, that their applications will be approved and funded, whether or not the president plans to make a trip to their town.
Well, I don't know how you got to be so cynical and thinking things are always so political, but you might just be right on this one. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We will not be briefing on Monday the 5th. So we'll be back on Thursday, July 8th. Brian will. I will be on vacation, but we'll be back then. Hope you have a great holiday weekend. See you on the 8th.
Yeah, see you back here on Thursday because somebody's got to do the work.